three things that stood out, I think, are of interest. First, most workers, I'm talking 80-90% of workers that we polled, did know about productivity and did think it was important, and that's interesting. I thought the figure would be less, but people were much more aware of changes in their working practices and changes in their organisation in terms of productivity. That's introducing new technology, or it could be new pay schemes, it could be new ways of working than I expected. So 8 out of 10 are aware of it. We asked them then if they felt they were working harder under productivity programs, initiatives today than they were 2 years ago. And we found about 60% said that they felt they were working harder. And I said, that's interesting, than they were 2 years ago. And then we asked them, do you think you're working smarter? You're working harder, but are you working smarter? And less than half said they were working smarter. So what we concluded was people seem to be working harder, not smarter, which seems to be the currency of improving productivity, is to work a lot smarter so you don't have to work harder. So the two things seem to be running in the opposite direction. We then asked people, well, okay, if your organisation was to introduce a productivity scheme, an initiative to improve productivity, what would your demand be, your want, your desire for a reward on that? And most people that answered our survey, certainly over half, felt that they were not being rewarded whatsoever for increases in productivity. So the management were asking them to cut costs, improve their performance, and were unwilling to reward them for the effort. And all the rewards seemed to be going to management, or above management to the directors and to the shareholders. That was one finding. Second finding that came out of that was we asked people, well, what sort of rewards would you like from increased productivity? And number one, as you probably would expect, was pay. People felt they wanted higher pay, quid pro quo. We'll work harder, you pay us more, that's a fairer deal. We don't mind working harder, not smarter, provided we get more pay. But actually quite close to that was a demand for training, better training. Digging into that, we asked people what sort of training, and they said, no, not necessarily training for us, training for management. We need to have better management. We felt one way as the Smith Institute was to ask people what sort of improvements in management, in training they wanted, and they wanted more management training. So they wanted to be better managed, essentially. Other things that people were asking for was obviously around skill development in terms of flexible working, better conditions at work, all seen in the frame of improving productivity. Other things we asked were around, what do you think of new technology? So if the robots are coming, how do you feel about that? What do you feel about artificial intelligence, digitalization? And surprisingly, we found most people, and this is interesting because it's probably a generational change, most people were quite positive about new technology. They weren't Luddites, they didn't think the new technology was going to destroy their lives and had to be smashing up the machines. People felt very positive about it. People wanted to embrace the technology, but what they were concerned about was that they weren't being consulted and asked about what the implications of technology would be, i.e. they weren't involved in the process. They didn't seem to have a voice in the introduction of new technology. So therefore, often they felt their jobs were threatened or their livelihoods threatened, but the sheer fact that new technology just appeared almost overnight in their organisation. Computer systems introduced without consultation, or their jobs replaced by automation without them being consulted. So I feel that from a worker's point of view, that's not a negative thing. They almost embrace technology. They see it around them, obviously in personal use. They're educated people, but they feel threatened by the sheer fact they're not being engaged and involved.